You're listening to Nostalgia Club, the podcast where we look back on our favorite childhood stories and revisit them as adults. At least one of us hasn't read or watched these series, so we also get a first-timer's opinion. Spoiler alert, we will be discussing storylines and future events beyond the first books and episodes, so proceed with caution.
Hey, welcome back to Nostalgia Club.
No.
Don't start the episode.
I have to edit this. I'm so upset.
Okay, anyway. Hello, welcome back to Nostalgia Club. My name is Michael. I'm a podcast editor, joined by two other podcast editors. Please state your names for the record.
Victoria.
My name is Jino Jang. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. They're both very done with me because I've just waffled for about 7 minutes before starting the episode.
No, I just think it's funny. Every time you introduce the episode, you always specify that we are podcast editors.
Hey, it's important. It's important information. How else are they going to know that we definitely know what we're doing here? Anyway, we're here to talk to you about a beloved children's classic. It's been around for a very long time. You may have heard of it. It is called The Chronicles of Narnia, specifically The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. Ooh. Victoria and I are familiar with it, both the book and the movie, or at least we were pretty sure we were familiar with the book, but it's been a long time, I think, for the both of us.
Yeah.
So rereading it was probably just as fresh for us as it was for Jino.
Hello.
And in this way, I want to ask Jino, vibe time. We're just going to talk about the vibes of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe before we go into plot details and spoilers. Jino, how'd you feel about this here children's fantasy classic? Long silence.
No, it was a religious experience. But I'm not going to put that in.
You would not be incorrect. It is literally a religious experience.
Yeah, it is.
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
I really enjoy this kind of old-timey stream of consciousness style writing for children's books. A lot of ands, not very many commas. It feels like one long run-on sentence. Like an old grandpa is spinning you a yarn around an open fire. But it's so cozy. It's so cozy and relaxing. I really like those vibes. I think Lord of the Rings also has a similar story, or at least The Hobbit does, and parts of Lord of the Rings.
It's almost like they knew each other.
It's almost like they were best friends. I don't know if that's true. But yes, for those who don't know, and I don't know why you wouldn't, C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, Tolkien, and Lewis. They worked closely together, and they had very different opinions about how to write books, and yet they do sound a little similar. Cozy. I enjoyed that. The pacing was surprising. But overall, I really enjoyed the book. I had seen the movie as a kid. And I was surprised how closely the movie followed the book. Mm-hmm. Some parts of it were paced differently, obviously, but all the main plot details were there. And, it took a little bit to get used to some of the phrasing of Mr. Lewis, but overall, a wonderful experience.
That's wonderful, because this came out like 1724? That's the one! He predicted World War II before it even happened, which is concerning now. I think it came out it must have been late 40s or 50.
1950.
1950.
This book specifically.
There you go, which is basically just, I think, very handy from, again, what you say, the storytelling perspective on this. Grandpa spinning you a yarn, because you can imagine a lot of the youths reading this story when it came out were probably around for the Blitz in England during World War II and were probably sent away, if they could be, to the British countryside, much like the children in the book, which is the frame, essentially, for the narrative taking place. I'm sure that experience was taxing enough on all of these children and young folks, but giving it this added angle, this fantastical sort of
escapism.
Yeah.
Yeah. And nostalgia, too, I bet, for that generation who had to go through that sort of trauma, to be able to look back on it in a fonder light.
Yeah.
A magical light.
A religious light.
A religious light.
A very clearly religious light. Victoria, how are you feeling coming back to this?
I love Narnia. I love the movies. I've rewatched the movies quite a bit, actually.
Really?
Prince Caspian is actually my favorite Narnia movie
Hmm.
because the characters are older in Prince Caspian, and I feel like the conflict there is just more exciting in terms of there's a war and Caspian needs to become king. And I also love the idea of, especially as a kid, I love the idea that these kids, they go to Narnia and then they get to go back multiple times.
Yeah.
I really like that idea until they're not allowed to go back anymore. But yeah, I love these characters a lot. I think the sibling dynamic is really strong between the characters. And I think it's also my nostalgia for the movies really bled into my nostalgia for this book. Because
they're
again,
fantastic movies.
yeah, the movies are so good. Again, I don't really remember if I read this book, but I must have. I distinctly remember reading The Voyage of the Dawn Treader because I had the book. I think I got it in a used bookstore or something. So I had it at home, so I'd always see it and be like, oh yeah, I read that. But I'm not sure if I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. But knowing what kind of person I was when I was a kid, I probably did.
Yeah, these books were everywhere, even for our generation, many, many, many years later. My elementary school classrooms always had the full set of Narnia books, and they were very popular, and I would look at them constantly anytime I was going to pick up a new book. But I think what turned me away was their covers were kind of boring. One of them was just like a kid with a sword about to hit a chair, and I was like, why is he attacking a chair?
It's the silver
Weird.
chair.
I'm going to read Bridge to Terabithia on loop because I like to traumatize myself, I guess. I just never picked them up, and I had many opportunities to, but I'm glad I did now because what a treat.
What a treat. Especially this one, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, is probably the one that most people know. It's a great classic, and it's got perhaps the catchiest name.
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
And you get what you get.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You got a lion, you get a witch, and you get a wardrobe.
You even get a couple of lions in there.
That's true.
Oh, yeah, there's another lion. There's the big lion that most people know, Aslan, Jesus. And then there's another lion who's just kind of there like, oh, hey,
Baby
I'm
Jesus.
here. Baby. That's the dogma, as they say.
Just really excited, just really vibing. Like, yeah, look at that big one. I'm like that.
There
Yeah,
is a
let's
fun
go.
line in the book that I highlighted where Aslan, he's gathering all the animals around and he's like, okay, so the cheetahs are going to go here and you guys are going to go here and us lions, we're going to stay at the head of the pack. And the other lion is like, did you hear that? He said us lions. I'm included. I'm like his friend. It's so funny.
There's a lot of that. The book takes a lot of asides like that with its characters. It will glaze over certain major plot impactful moments, but it always has a wonderful time just going, here's a side character and here's the fun little thing they're doing that you've probably noticed one of your friends do on the playground.
Yeah, again, old man spinning a yarn. It really does feel like he's getting distracted by what he finds more interesting. He's like, oh, yeah, they're fighting a battle, I guess, over there. But let me talk about this trout. Isn't it delicious? I'm hungry. I know probably he wrote this with many drafts, but it really did feel like this was the first draft, and he was just kind of meandering through the story all right, what happens now? They need to, probably got to fix this. Let me go back, let me go back to the other character. You might be wondering what's happening to him. Okay, we're going there. Well, what happens over here? Hey, we'll just skip that part. They talk and they go to bed. All right, next morning. It's very much of a stream of consciousness, but I don't hate that. I think it adds to the charm of the book.
Oh yeah, it's very self-aware that it is a story, and
Yeah.
we are telling you this story now.
They also address the audience a lot, saying this probably makes you feel this way. And I agree. Yeah. So I thought that was fun.
It knows exactly what it is and what it's trying to be.
Yeah. Michael, do you want to hit us with that plot summary?
I think it's time. We've come close enough to just sort of talking about it, so we may as well go all in. In World War II England, the four Pevensey siblings, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy, are evacuated from London to be safe from the German Blitz. They stay with Professor Kirk at his large house in the country, and while exploring the house, the youngest Pevensey, Lucy, enters a magical wardrobe that transports her to the world of Narnia. Once there, she meets a faun named Mr. Tumnus. Surprised at seeing a human, Tumnus invites Lucy to tea and tells her of Narnia's wonders, but he also warns her of the evil White Witch who claims to rule all of Narnia. She keeps the land in perpetual winter and demands that any creature who finds a human deliver them into her clutches. Mr. Tumnus, deciding not to betray Lucy to the witch, sends her home. At first, none of Lucy's siblings believe her about Narnia, but then Edmund, the second youngest, stumbles into the wardrobe too. There, he meets the White Witch, who enchants him with Turkish delight and convinces him to deliver his siblings unto her, at which point she will make him a prince. Finally, all the siblings enter Narnia themselves. Lucy takes them to meet Mr. Tumnus, but finds his home ransacked. Like so many others, Mr. Tumnus has been taken to the witch's castle and turned to stone. Thankfully, 2 friendly beavers come to save the children. They tell them of a prophecy that claims the White Witch's rule will end when 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve sit on the thrones at Cair Paravel. They also learn that the great lion Aslan, Narnia's true ruler, has returned after many years away. Edmund sneaks off to warn the White Witch and is surprised when she treats him so cruelly. She sends wolves after the other children and brings Edmund with her to intercept Aslan at a landmark called the Stone Table. Meanwhile, Peter, Susan, Lucy, and the beavers travel to reach Aslan as well. On the way, they are given gifts and weapons by Father Christmas, of all people, and see evidence of spring, both proof that the White Witch's power is fading. The children reach Aslan before the witch and meet him and his grand army. Peter slays one of the wolves the witch sent to kill them and follows the others back to find and rescue Edmund. All seems well. But then the witch invokes the deep magic from the dawn of time, claiming Edmund's life is forfeit because of his status as a traitor. Aslan saves Edmund by taking his place, sacrificing himself while Susan and Lucy watch from afar. As Susan and Lucy mourn, Aslan suddenly appears before them, resurrected. Aslan explains that the deeper magic from before the dawn of time reverses death if a willing victim takes the place of a traitor. Then he whisks the girls across Narnia to the witch's castle and frees all the people she turned to stone. This brand new army joins Peter and Edmund's forces in the heat of battle, and the White Witch is slain. For years after, the Pevensey children rule Narnia, eventually growing into adults. While on a hunt for a white stag, said to grant the wishes of those who catch it, the Pevenseys rediscover the wardrobe that brought them to Narnia in the first place, and stumble back into England. Seemingly, no time has passed since they left, and each returns to the age they were when they entered the wardrobe. They tell their host, Professor Kirk, what happened, and are surprised when he believes them. Moreover, Kirk believes they will one day return to Narnia, and says it will be when they least expect it. And that is the plot summary. I know it kind of took a while, considering Narnia is in fact shorter than a Warrior Cats book, but The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, as we sort of discussed, spends a lot of time C.S. Lewis just sort of telling us things.
Yeah.
Like, by the way, here's all this lore about Narnia. It's very important for you to understand about what comes next. And now I'm going to talk about food for a while. And here's some more lore, also very important. Deep magic from the dawn of time. And this is why Aslan is now not dead, and so on and so forth. So it takes a while to sort of be like, okay, so here's the deal about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah.
But that's the full plot. I want to jump in by saying it's very clear, even if you're just like online, even if you haven't read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, that coming from C.S. Lewis in particular, the book is very much steeped in Catholicism, like in particular, and that Aslan is a metaphor for Jesus, and there's a number of other metaphors from basically the Bible throughout the series if you read it. But I was actually quite surprised, and it made me kind of wonder to myself, did I actually read these books? Were they read to me when I was a kid? How many times the inhabitants of Narnia refer to the children as sons of Adam and daughters of Eve?
Constantly.
They refer to them as that more than they refer to them by their own names.
Yeah.
It's impossible to miss. You start to wonder if maybe C.S. Lewis was paid by the word at a certain point. Because he's like, yeah, I could just say Peter, but I could also say son of Adam. And that's triple the rate there.
Well, I started to feel like it was almost like a world building thing where maybe the citizens of Narnia don't know the word human. And so human, or son of Adam and daughter of Eve, is the replacement phrase for human. They don't really have humans as common as we do. They're talking animals and centaurs and all sorts of fun creatures, but not as many humans. So when there is a human, it's like very like, you are a son of Adam or a daughter of Eve. There's also one time Aslan refers to
a dwarf.
A dwarf?
Like a Tolkien-esque dwarf, I suppose.
As a son of Earth.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting.
Very curious indeed. And I guess it does have almost like a morale boosting effect every time they say it, because it's part of a prophecy that's
Yeah,
supposed to end
that's true.
their suffering.
In the movie, they actually say the word human. They mention son of Adam and daughter of Eve a couple times, and then they're like, okay, we're done. You guys are humans.
It would become quite the mouthful.
Yeah.
At a certain point, constantly saying those words again and again and again.
Yeah.
Humans much easier. We know what you're saying, Mr. Lewis. We understand.
we got you. And then they even refer to the White Witch as they get deep into the Catholic lore. They say that the White Witch is not a daughter of Eve, but rather the offspring of Adam and his first wife, Lilith. And when
Dude, that was crazy.
That was crazy.
I was like, I can't believe they said that in the book.
I'm trying to think, is that even Catholic lore? I don't know. They never really talk about that.
No, actually, yeah. I didn't grow up Catholic, though, so.
I did.
I will admit, while you were reading your synopsis, I was frantically searching for I think it was a Tumblr text post I saw a long time ago that I know must exist, but I cannot find it for the life of me, discussing Santa in Narnia.
Oh.
And the implications of his existence.
No, I wrote in my notes, I was like, wait a minute. So there is Santa in Narnia. So they celebrate Christmas both with Jesus and with Santa? Interesting.
It's a very, like, when I first read, like, oh, the White Witch, she makes it so that it's always winter and never Christmas. I was like, oh, that's a funny, like, concept for kids. Like,
But then here's Santa.
yeah, then
Yeah.
here's straight up Santa. Here, child, take this weapon.
I didn't find the text post I was looking for, but I did find lots of text posts about how supposedly Tolkien and Lewis almost ended their friendship because of Santa. Because
Ooh.
Tolkien hated the fact that Lewis just dropped Santa in, gave 3 of the children tools, but not the 4th, and then vanished from the book. And Tolkien was like, you can't do that! It's not proper storytelling! And Lewis was like, I will do whatever I want, old man! And I'm taking the dwarves too! But I couldn't find the text post about Santa. Something about how powerful Santa must be if the White Witch feared him so greatly. And just something about how his existence implies some sort of like deep existential peril. But I can't find it. So don't quote me on that. But the Narnia fandom still going strong in the year of our Tumblr.
I suppose it must be. Yeah, it is very interesting when you see the sort of Santa mention, like, an almost Gravity Falls-esque lore drop. It's always winter and never Christmas. Oh, so they have a concept of Santa Claus. Oh, they have a concept of Santa Claus. There's a moment that I didn't cover in the synopsis where the White Witch, trucking Edmund along with her, comes upon like a family of squirrels and fawns like having a little feast. And she's like, who gave you these things? And they're like, oh, it was Father Christmas. Father Christmas is back. And she's like, what? Say that you're lying and you will be spared. And a little baby squirrel is like, no, it was Father Christmas. And then she freaking annihilates him. She turns him to stone, which I don't think that was in the movie.
No. The book actually goes more into, like, Edmund really goes through it in the book more than he does in the movie. He definitely goes through it in the movie, but they don't go into as much of Edmund's ordeal in the movie as they do in the book. In the book, Edmund meets the White Witch. He promises her that he's going to bring his siblings back. And then he shows up at her palace and she's like, you didn't bring your siblings. I'm locking you in jail. So he gets locked in jail. And then after that, in the book, she actually takes Edmund with her and forces him to come along as they're hunting down his siblings. And so Edmund is just sitting there. He's shivering. He doesn't have a coat. And he's like, my siblings are going to die and it's my fault. And then because the White Witch's magic is starting to wear off, the snow starts melting and suddenly they can't ride the sleigh anymore.
The sledge?
The sledge.
I guess.
Yeah.
Please, Santa has a sleigh.
Yeah. And so then the White Witch is like, fine, we'll walk and we're going to tie up Edmund and the dwarf is going to like whip him.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep walking like that. And it's like, wow, poor Edmund. I feel kind of bad for him.
Edmund's character arc surprised me, too. I didn't realize he was going to get enchanted by Turkish delight.
Yeah, that's something that they don't really, I don't think they clarify that in the movie. In the movie, it's just like, this candy's the best candy ever. Yeah, I'll betray my siblings. Just give me more of this candy. But in the book, it clearly states like, once you eat food from the witch's magic little copper cup that magically, creates whatever food you wish, it enthralls you and you become an instant addict. So that's why Edmund became as evil as he did from the jump. He was literally turned into a hardcore magic food addict from the jump.
Not even once.
I guess, I can see why they changed it for the movie because it gives Edmund more agency in his actions. But even then, though, I feel like he was much more manipulated by the White Witch than anything.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
He's only 11 or something.
Yeah.
He's a spiteful little child who hates everything. My siblings are the worst.
And Peter keeps calling him a little beast.
This is another reason why I like Prince Caspian better, because in Prince Caspian, Edmund is such a good character. He's funny. He supports Peter a lot. I mean, they obviously they still have their arguments, but when it comes down to high stakes, Edmund is right there with Peter and all his other siblings.
Nothing like a reformed character.
So he's a far better character in Prince Caspian. There is a line, though, that I was surprised by in the book, and it's at the end of the battle, which, by the way, in the book, they brush over the battle so fast.
Oh, yeah. It's very much like Aslan and Susan and Lucy and all the creatures he freed roar in, and Aslan tumbles onto the witch, and the battle is basically over. And then in the next chapter, it begins after the battle was over and this and that, and the White Witch was slain, then they went over and did this, and I'm like, whoa. You killed the antagonist off screen.
Yeah. After the battle, Peter tells Aslan, actually, it was Edmund who made it possible for me to defeat the White Witch because he broke her wand.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why it, weakened her and I was able to, get a good hit in or whatever. But Edmund gets injured in that battle, pretty badly injured. And so Lucy rushes over. She has her little vial of magic healing potion. And she heals Edmund. And understandably, as his sister, she's waiting to make sure he's okay. And Aslan is I'm just going to read it.
Go.
Okay. There are other people wounded, said Aslan while she was still looking eagerly into Edmund's pale face and wondering if the cordial had any result. Yes, I know, said Lucy crossly. Wait a minute. Daughter of Eve, said Aslan in a graver voice. Others also are at the point of death. Must more people die for Edmund? And I'm but dude, it's her brother.
If you care so much,
minute,
if you really want other people to get some of that tasty magic vial juice, just take the cup from her.
Yeah.
There's also an interpretation of that line that says, Edmund's already killed many people. You want more to die on his behalf?
Yeah.
This little beast? This little traitor?
I was Aslan, didn't you sacrifice yourself willingly for Edmund? Why are you acting like this? If you hated him so much, just
He's just a big cat.
Yeah.
He hasn't had his kibbies. That's kibble for the uninitiated.
The uninitiated. There's another moment like that where when the wolves attack and Mogrim, the captain of the wolves, is attacking Susan and Susan's trying to climb up a tree, and as Peter's rushing over to try and find his siblings and save them from these wolves, a number of Aslan's armies, his creatures start sort of crowding around oh, we got to deal with this threat. And Aslan kind of pushes him back and he's like, let the prince cut his teeth or cut his spurs on this or something. And I was like, what?
As a kid.
Aslan?
Has Peter ever had any formal battle training with a sword and a shield or anything? No.
I mean, I get it. It's a kid's story. We've been very clear. It's like a fable, all these talking creatures and metaphors and this and that. But I was still kind of I don't know. You're being pretty clear that Aslan is Jesus. And I when I think of the archetype image of a Jesus character being nobody help this person, you kill it. I'm okay, all right, well, at least everyone was fine in the end.
Yeah.
My holy lineage gives me the moral high ground. Child, kill this wolf.
Oh my gosh, that was amazing.
Ugh, always kills me.
I'll be here all night. No, I won't. I'm going to go home after this. Quick, go to your phone to look at your notes while I talk about how Santa says that women shouldn't fight because that's terrible.
Oh my god.
Boys can fight, but not women.
I must have breezed past that.
So when Father Christmas shows up and he gives all the people gifts, quick side note, he gives Mrs. Beaver a sewing machine, which I think is great. Because when they're trying to escape from the White Witch, Mrs. Beaver is like, do you think we can carry my sewing machine? And Mr. Beaver's like, no, it's so heavy. What are you thinking? Are you going to sew while we're on the run? And she's like, no, but like, I don't want the White Witch to steal it or break it.
Honestly,
Valid.
I really like Mrs.
Yeah,
Beaver.
Mrs. Beaver is great.
Mrs. Beaver's like trying to pack them a lunch, and Mr. Beaver's like, no time. Mrs. Beaver's like, you want to starve to death?
Yeah.
We got to pack some food.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad she gets a newer and nicer sewing machine from Father Christmas.
Those are expensive.
Yeah. So he gives Lucy her cordial and her dagger, and he's like, okay, I will specifically read the quote because I don't want to misquote. I highlighted it.
I'll gladly send these boys to death, but not you girls. Ho, ho, ho. I'm Santa. Take
Okay.
that, Tolkien.
So he says, and the dagger is to defend yourself at great need, for you also are not to be in battle. Why, sir, said Lucy, I don't know, but I think I could be brave enough. That is not the point, he said, but battles are ugly when women fight. And I understand that he's trying to say, like, when war gets to the point where it's so bad that women and children are involved, it's really nasty and war is horrible. But why you gotta say it like that?
In a modern context where we have Katniss Everdeen and all these other characters,
Well, like, he
it
says the
hits
same
different.
thing. He gives Susan a bow and arrow, and he's like, you have this bow and arrow. It will never miss, but don't use it.
Does she use it in the book at all?
I don't think so.
I don't think she.
Not really.
I don't
She
think
uses
she ever
it-
uses it. She
And
shoots
then-
it once in the movie.
Okay, here's my other beef with C.S. Lewis, though. At the very end, related to his portrayal of women, at the very end, he describes, because all the characters, they become kings and queens of Narnia.
yeah.
And so he goes into this long explanation of how wonderful they are as kings and queens and blah, 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 blah. And then he says, Peter becomes a tall and deep-chested man and a great warrior, and he's called King Peter the Magnificent. And Susan grew into a tall and gracious woman with black hair that fell almost to her knees, and the kings of the countries beyond the sea began to send ambassadors asking for her hand in marriage, and she was called Susan the Gentle. Edmund was a graver and quieter man than Peter and great in counsel and judgment. He was called King Edmund the Just. But as for Lucy, she was always gay and golden-haired, and all princes in those parts desired her to be their queen, and her own people called her Queen Lucy the Valiant. Why are the women just described for their worth by how many people wanted to marry them? I was so upset. I was like, okay, so Peter gets to be talked about how great of a warrior he is, and Edmund gets to be like super smart and like really just and wise. And then it's also like, wow, Susan and Lucy were really pretty, and lots of people wanted to marry them. They must have been amazing queens.
Lucy got lots of heart letters. That made her valiant, I guess?
Like, they're only described for their looks and nothing else.
Yeah.
I think their actions speak for themselves, at least. At
I
least
know,
in like
yeah,
the main
yeah.
body of the book. I think it's nice that given, especially like Susan receives like the least amount of characterization. So it's nice that like she and Lucy, and since Lucy's the one who started it, they get to be there to be with Aslan during like the lowest point and like the resurrection of all the petrified peoples.
Yeah. Peter and Susan's character is Peter going, I don't know. Susan? Susan's like, yeah. Peter's like, all right, yeah. Or Peter going, yes! And then Susan in the background a little farther away. Yes! that's
Actually, she says no a lot. Most of the time, she doesn't want to do what Peter wants to do. She's like, I don't think we should explore the woods. It seems unsafe.
But then they talk about it, and then they're like, we'll do it anyway.
Yeah. However, I still have further beef about how Susan's character is treated in further Narnia books.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff from further off in the Narnia series.
We don't have time to go into all of that. If you know what I'm talking about, those are my thoughts.
These old-timey 1950s writers, they're not very good at writing women. Tolkien avoided that by not writing any women.
Okay, no, but Tolkien gave us Éowyn.
That's true.
That's true.
You just need one banger.
Yeah.
Just a one-hit wonder.
When the bar is low, a single leap will do the job.
Yeah. I don't know. So I haven't read Prince Caspian, or at least I don't remember if I've read Prince Caspian, but at least in the movie Prince Caspian, I feel like the female characters are very strong in that movie. But when Father Christmas gives Lucy the gift, he doesn't say the line about wars begin.
Yeah, just the fact that Santa's in this magical fantasy movie is enough for the scene, I think.
Just the fact that Santa gives a little girl a dagger.
Weapons! Ho, 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 ho.
I think it is sad, though, that Edmund didn't get anything.
But not for Edmund, that little
Edmund.
beast.
That little beast. Make us to all good, whatever. Bye.
That little horrible child. The antagonist fears me. Okay, bye.
I do think it's really interesting how often, like, how imperious and cruel the White Witch is and how strong she is in reference to, like, basically every other character. But in the face of, like, specifically Aslan, she can't really hold a candle, and it's just through, like, trickery and invoking whatever the deep magic from the dawn of time that she's able to gain an upper hand. Because from the immediate, like, reference to Aslan, there's that description of, like, the moment the children heard Aslan's name, it's like they remembered a wonderful dream and it just made them feel at ease. Except for Edmund, who who was like, I feel a little sick.
I think they do a good job of portraying it in the movie, because in that scene, they have Peter, Susan, and Lucy all sitting in the foreground, and then Edmund's like slightly in the background, like in shadow slightly. And so when the Beavers mention Aslan, the three of them, like, they're kind of like, like, that's interesting. And then you see Edmund in the background, he's like uncomfortable, and he's like, who's Aslan? Yeah, it's great.
Even when the White Witch comes to basically say, like, I want Edmund's life because he's a traitor. And Aslan says, well, figure something out here. Let's go talk about it. And they go talk about it, quote unquote, off screen. And then they come back. And Aslan's like, we've made a deal. And the White Witch is like, are you sure you're going to keep your deal? And it says Aslan roars at her and she hikes up her dress and runs away for her life. And I'm like, that's a very interesting dynamic between your like villain and, I mean, I was going to say hero, but it's in some ways less hero than just like literally God character.
Yeah. I just want to jump in on that specific moment where Aslan goes to talk to the White Witch, because I read the book. I know you guys listened to like an audiobook version of it, so you guys didn't get to see the fun illustrations that are in this book.
Oh.
But there's one illustration that really made me laugh.
All right, we'll describe it for... Oh, that's hilarious. So basically, imagine Aslan the lion, except he's standing on two legs, and he's got his hands, his paws behind his back, and to his other side is the White Witch, and he's just kind of like strolling with his head down pensive, but he's just walking on two legs as the White Witch is like trying to explain, like, okay, so here's the deal.
This changes everything.
It really does.
There's a couple of lines in
There's
the
a line
book.
where it says that he like claps his paw.
Yeah, or like he shakes Peter's hand or Edwin's hand or something. And I always kind of assume like, oh, that's like a weird, like maybe he like reached out a paw. Are all the animals bipedal?
You know, they might be.
Some of them actually are.
This
Well, they would have to be.
changes everything.
I've never seen
Narnia.
Aslan being bipedal.
Narnia is now terrifying. I don't want to go there anymore.
It is straight up fable. It's hyper fable territory because all the animals are, well.
Can you imagine Aslan orders the cheetahs up front and you just see these like bipedal cheetahs full sprinting towards you, arms pumping, like hands in like knife mode, just like locking eyes and sprinting like Usain Bolt. Like, oh my God, that's terrifying.
I think I'd just fall over.
No wonder the White Witch only recruited like jinn and devils and like fantasy creatures, because like all the regular animals are just weird.
Yeah, I'm really glad in the movies they did not make Aslan bipedal.
That would have been very interesting, especially for the level of CGI they had to work with at the time.
I was like, okay, like if he's shaking someone's hand, like he can reach out one paw. He's still on like three paws, so it's fine. But
we've
then
all
there was a
seen it.
when where it's like, and then Aslan clapped his paws. I was imagining him just
Like doing
jumping.
a quick like when you're doing push-ups and you do a quick clap between them. I think he could do it if he like sat back on his haunches, maybe.
Yeah.
Sat
that
back
would
on
work.
his haunches, clap his paws.
Yeah, I guess.
Even then, just like the mechanics of like a cat's arms moving like that, it just doesn't work visually.
Yeah, that really got me. I was just like, why?
Aslan acts kind of suspect for a number of scenes before his eventual like sacrifice or whatever. But I really enjoyed the scene after he comes back to life, and it describes him in very like, oh, this is just a wild thing. This is just a lion, because he was uncertain if he was going to get brought back to life. But when he is, he's super happy. And it describes Susan and Lucy just kind of like rolling around in like the meadows with him. And and they just, C.S. Lewis describes it as like Lucy couldn't figure out whether it was like playing with a kitten or a thunderstorm. And it just describes like all this merriment and rollicking, celebrating Aslan coming back to life. And that was like another moment of like, what a children's classic.
There's
like,
also a really nice moment where when Lucy and Susan get on Aslan's back to go and save the world or whatever, there's like a really nice description of what it's like to ride on a lion's back.
Yeah.
He's basically like, imagine if you're riding a horse, but you can't hear the hooves and it's just the soft padding of feet on the forest floor. And also, like, instead of the horse's back, it's like a lush mane of hair. It's just like really soft. I was just like, wow, that does sound nice. And he's also like running at just the right pace. He's like twice the speed out of a horse, but like not so much that you feel like you're fearing for your life. It was like, wow, that was a good moment to wax poetic.
Imagine riding a horse, but it doesn't suck. Don't horses suck? I hate horses. My name is C.S. Lewis, and I hate horses. Unlike Tolkien, that hack.
No Santa Claus. I'll show you no Santa Claus. I'm trying to think of other ones, but there's moments like that where C.S. Lewis will like make reference to something where he's like, you know what it's like to ride a horse? And I'm like, no, go on. Where he describes like when Aslan goes to the White Witch's castle and like brings all the petrified people back to life. C.S. Lewis describes it as basically like the edges of them sort of being lit aglow with some kind of warmth, like a fire. And C.S. Lewis says, you may have seen it yourself, dear reader. I'm sure it's a very common sight when someone you've seen goes up to a fireplace and puts some newspaper in the fireplace and lights it with a match, and the edges of it just kind of crisp just so, and it takes over the whole thing. And I'm like, I don't think I have seen that in person, but I've seen it on video, so I know what you're talking about. C.S. Lewis is like, video? What?
What are you talking about, small boy?
You mean like the reels they show at the cinema? Yes, Lewis, that's the one.
Yes.
He's old. He's dead.
Yeah. In Aslan's country now.
Aslan. And then Aslan just leaves at the end too. I remember that from the movie, but I didn't realize that Aslan was not just, quote, the king of Narnia, unquote, but just like a general advisor for all nations in times of peril. And he just kind of wanders
he has, like,
from crisis
other
to
countries
crisis.
to oversee and whatnot.
That doesn't make him a king. He's not a king.
Well, no, I guess the children are the quote unquote like kings and queens of
They
Narnia.
really use the term king loosely. Because they do refer to Aslan as being the king of Narnia, but then it's also like Peter and Edmund are also kings.
I think it's like the literally the Jesus sense of king.
Yeah. That's just where the religious aspect is coming in.
Yeah. They make mention a few times of an emperor, which I think is
yes.
supposed to be
the emperor
God.
Across the sea.
Yeah,
It's
God.
literally just God.
Aslan's Jesus, the Emperor's God. But it was very much like, okay, so if we have like a more or less flesh and blood Jesus metaphor, in future books, I'm trying to think, do we ever meet the Emperor?
I have no idea. I assume if we did, it would be in the last battle, but I can't tell you for sure because I never got through the last battle. I think I tried to start it and then I was like, I'm done.
Do you know what happens in the last battle?
No.
That's
well, I
probably
know
for
some
the
things.
best.
I know that Susan is not there.
Susan is not there. Susan eventually, I suppose, for one reason or another, I'm not sure if it's explained, stops believing in Narnia.
Susan becomes an atheist.
Susan becomes an atheist. That is like the metaphor.
Yeah.
Oh.
Basically, like, friends of Narnia are people who've been to Narnia, who believe in Narnia, blah, blah, blah. And in the last battle, Peter, Lucy, and Edmund get to go back to Narnia. I think it's like they literally died.
Yeah, I was debating whether or not we should actually like talk about it.
Hello, listener. I know I said I wasn't going to talk about this, but now I'm going to talk about it.
Welcome to Nostalgia Club. Have you read the Book of Revelations? So, for those who may not be aware, I don't know, the end of the Bible involves an apocalypse. And the end of the Narnia series is kind of the Book of Revelations because it's the end of Narnia as well.
Huh.
Yeah. Narnia is more or less destroyed. I've only read summations, so I won't even go into it, but it's very much like C.S. Lewis goes all the way with his, like, You know what? I'm going to end this like what I'm basing it off of. The Book of Revelations. There we go. Narnia comes to an end. I'm also going to say that Peter and Edmund and Lucy were in a train crash in the real world, and immediately at the moment of death were whisked away to Aslan's country, and they go with Aslan and all the friends of Narnia to Aslan's true country, which Narnia was just a pale shadow of. And this is where the adventures begin and never end. And I'm like, this is a real bold choice to kill off your children characters at the end of your beloved series.
I mean, I guess they are like adults at this point.
I don't know.
Okay, so
Does Susan also die?
No,
No.
so Susan doesn't die. She gets left behind. She thinks her entire family is dead. I mean, they are, but like she doesn't know that they're in Narnia. She doesn't believe in Narnia, and it's literally described that she turned away from Narnia because she fell in love with, or she was like drawn in by nylon lipstick and something and parties or something.
It's a very dated idea of
What happened in C.S. Lewis's life that made him go, I hate Susan now? Taking out my personal anger on Susan.
I mean, she wasn't incredibly well drawn from the get-go, so I imagine he was like, this one I can probably just...
He's like, I need a metaphor for someone who's gonna stop believing in Narnia. Susan.
That's C.S. Lewis. He makes some choices.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, Gino, when you said you always skipped over the Narnia books to reread Bridge to Terabithia over and over, my friend, the other path was just a longer route to more dead kids. Spoilers for Bridge to Terabithia.
Bridge to Terabithia is a really great, fun book until the last couple of chapters, and then it's devastating.
Yeah.
But if you just keep rereading the first, 95% of it over and over and over again, the kids never die.
Yeah.
What? Huh?
Canon is whatever you want it to be, dear listener. Canon begins and ends where you would like it to.
Yes.
That is called headcanon, and I think it can be perfectly valid. The moment you put art into the world, it ceases being yours and becomes something else.
And it's terrifying.
Sometimes it goes in directions you don't want it to. But sometimes it can just be nice, right? Can't it just be nice? So it's perhaps understandable to a certain degree why the movie adaptations steadily fell off as the years went on. Because there are more wonderful adventures to be had in Narnia, but at a certain point, I'm sure some people looked ahead and went, so how does this whole thing wrap up? Oh, that would require some significant alterations in the adaptation. You know what? Maybe we'll just do Dawn Treader and call it a day.
Well, I think they ended it well with Dawn Treader. I think it's also because after the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, there are no more Pevensey siblings who go to Narnia. Voyage of the Dawn Treader is the last time just Edmund and Lucy get to go. Basically, Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, and the Voyage of the Dawn Treader is maybe the most cohesive arc of Narnia. So you have the first one where all four siblings go, and then Prince Caspian is when all four of them get to go again and have another adventure. But at the end, Aslan tells Peter and Susan, your time in Narnia has come to an end. Basically, he says, you're too old for Narnia now. You don't need to come to Narnia. It's time for you to live in your own world. And it's kind of sad, but they understand. And then because Edmund and Lucy are a bit younger, they get to go back one more time. So in Voyage of the Dawn Treader, they go back with their cousin Eustace, who is even more annoying than Edmund in the first book.
You gotta have one annoying kid per book. It's important to keep
There's
that quota.
actually no annoying kids in Prince Caspian.
Just war?
Yeah, just war.
Just politics?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. So the rest of the Narnia books are different kids. And the three first kids dying in a train crash at the end of the final book is just and also, they died?
I don't know. I think they
Well-
might enter partway in to the last book. or
Well, okay,
something.
so here's the thing. The Narnia books, some of them are written out of order. So it's kind of like the Star Wars thing, where they did, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was the first one, but then The Magician's Nephew, which is technically the prequel, where it talks about how the wardrobe came to be, that was written, I think, fourth.
I think it's the
Got it.
second to last. Or-
Maybe. I don't remember.
I thought it was.
So in Voyage of the Dawn Treader, after that, Aslan tells Edmund and Lucy, now it's your time in Narnia is also done. In the movie, he also says, in your world, I'm known as a different name, and you got to get to know me from that name. And I'm like, okay.
I think we figured it out, Aslan.
Yeah.
Entei.
Entei is a Pokemon for
Yes.
anyone who's
Big lion.
big lion.
Big red lion.
Big red lion, deep voice, cares for a little girl in the movie.
Right on his back.
Mm-hmm.
Come back to life.
Wow, it is Aslan. Then there's the silver chair, which the annoying cousin.
Oh, yeah. Guy hitting a chair.
Yeah. The annoying cousin from The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, that's his adventure. He goes with another one of his friends. There's also the horse and his boy, which is like, I don't really know that much about it. All I know is that it's set during the time when Peter, Susan, Lucy, and Edmund are kings and queens of Narnia. So when they're adults.
Oh.
Susan shows up, I think, briefly, and maybe one of the other characters also shows up briefly as queen, like as an adult. By the way, it still screws me up that they became full adults and then had to go back to when they were, like, when Lucy was 8.
That must have been
Traumatic.
a real shock. Like for Peter, at least, it's like, whoa, I'm like, how old is Peter actually?
Okay, so Lucy is like 8, I think.
Yeah.
Edmund, let's say he's like 10 or 11. And then Susan says she's like 12. So Peter's like 14?
Like, that wouldn't be great.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be as, I think, insane as what Lucy has to go through. Because Lucy's got to be like, what? I forget if it says how many years they are.
They're in Narnia for a long time. By the way, in the book, it's really funny because by the time they're adults, they talk real funny.
Oh,
They start being like, I shall, like, my brother, I shall follow. Yeah, like,
They start to lose me. When they start talking like that, I was like, I don't like them anymore.
Well, they
Make
don't
it
even
stop.
remember, like, the wardrobe or anything.
Yeah, they don't remember anything. Like, it's been so long that they don't remember that they used to come from a different world.
Like decades at least.
Yeah.
And then your consciousness is shunted back into your 8-year-old body and all your memories got locked behind a prison. You're just like, I'm child again. Puberty 2, here we go.
Yeah. If I was Susan, I'd be like, goodbye, I'm done. Like, no wonder she was like, I don't want to interface with Narnia.
No, not again.
Yeah, well, they touch on it a little bit in Prince Caspian, where Edmund and Peter do have some conflicts because Peter, like, constantly gets into fights because he's, like, tired of being pushed around. He's like, I was a king in Narnia, and, like, now I have to, like, be this, like, teenager who gets bullied by people and blah, blah. And Edmund is always like, stop it. You're not king of Narnia here.
Edmund got gut checked from the get-go, so he's not...
Yeah, I think it's Edmund. It might also be Susan. Susan reacts in, like, the opposite way, where she's like, Narnia is no longer part of our lives. We have to move on. Lucy is still like, maybe we'll go to Narnia again. And then Edmund's kind of like in between. So it's kind of interesting.
It is interesting.
But yeah, I was like, that would suck to be a full adult and then have to be 8 again.
That kind of flashes me to when I was just like reading what some of these other books were. The Magician's Nephew, which, as you said, goes into the creation of the wardrobe. It also details how the White Witch, name of Jadis. I thought it was Janice.
No, it's Jadis.
I thought it was the funniest thing. Yeah, Jadis. How she gets to Narnia. And I was delighted just skimming through the details because for a while, she's just in, like, our world, the human world, but she doesn't have any magic. But she's still just as, like, Machiavellian as ever. And so she's just performing a bunch of petty crimes. There's, like, grand theft carriage or whatever, like, robbing a convenience store or something, wildly declaring her intent to take over the world.
Amazing. More power to her.
It made me think of what you described with Peter, of like, I was a king in Narnia.
Yeah.
What do you mean? I have to do math.
Yeah, that would...
I'm back in my child body during World War II? Oh, that's fine, I guess. Hope my parents are alive.
I mean, honestly, like, I understand the whole, like, oh no, we died in a train crash at the end of book 8. Well, at least now we get to go to Aslan's country and so on and so forth. Personally, I just feel so exhausted. I'd be like, you know what? Just give me half an eternity to just freaking just process all of this. You can't take me from a train crash straight into Narnia again and then into, like, Super Narnia. Like, this is too much, man. You're a lion. I became a kid again, like, 2 times in a row.
Well, it didn't happen twice.
Even still, if I passed
In Prince
on...
Caspian, they don't stay that long.
Well, that's good for them.
Nice.
Good for them.
If I pass in a violent explosion of metal and shrapnel and I awoke to a bright light and a lion standing on its hind legs, posing at me, telling me, welcome, child, you have died, I would ask the lion to please send me back. Please send me back and get down on all fours. This is not right. Down on your paws. Put those thumbs away.
Those illustrations, or at least the one that you showed us, did look great. And it did, like, really, really redefine in my mind, as well as Gino's, like, oh, this is full-on storybook territory.
You both know my opinion on humanoid bipedal Pokemon. This is a reflection of that.
We're getting too close.
We're getting too close.
Well, that brings up another line from the book, right? Is it something the beavers say or whatever?
Something about being human.
Yeah, and it was a really interesting line, at least from a fantasy perspective. If you take it just from our perspective in the world, it's like, hey, take it easy there. There's been too many comparisons that various peoples across history have made to other human beings being not quite human. But in a fantasy setting, there is a compelling, very interesting line about, beware things that...
Oh, I found it because I also highlighted it.
Oh, read it.
Okay, so this is Mr. Beaver. He says, in general, take my advice. When you meet anything that's going to be human and isn't yet, or used to be human once and isn't now, or ought to be human and isn't, you keep your eyes on it and feel for your hatchet.
Used to be human or will become human.
Or should be, but isn't.
This is some SCP vibe.
Yeah. This covers your vampires. This covers your zombies.
Mm-hmm.
This even covers what isn't covered quite so much, but this even covers, I don't know, maybe werewolves is
which
good.
do exist in the book.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. But also, I suppose, depending on how advanced they get, chimpanzees. Right now, they're using some stone tools. It's okay. Let's take it easy. But if they start developing a capacity for fine art, we may be in trouble, according to C.S. Lewis.
Total tangent. But a recent discovery in South America that there are monkeys that use rocks to smash their food. And when they do that, they create stone flakes. And scientists would use those stone flakes as evidence of human habitation. And now all of these scientists are realizing, wait a minute, all of these stone flakes could have just been monkeys the whole time. And we have no way of knowing. This changes everything.
Whoa.
We used to be able to say, stone flakes. Humans lived here 100%, with certainty. Now they're like, maybe it was monkeys. We can't tell.
See, this is what C.S. Lewis was warning us about. These monkeys are ruining everything.
All these poor archaeologists, thousands of years of history. Now just a big question mark. Maybe it was just these monkeys. Just smashing nuts, because what else are you going to do with rocks?
But now I'm kind of looking at bipedal Aslan, and I'm like, where do you fall in this?
If we asked C.S. Lewis, he'd be like, well, Aslan is different because he's the king of Narnia.
Yeah, that's true.
He's the Gandalf.
That's another interesting parallel. Oh, where did I find it? I read it or something or heard it. I guess C.S. Lewis, he initially got the idea for Narnia and A Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or what became it, when he saw a painting, basically, of a fawn walking through a wintry woodland with a set of parcels, which is how Mr. Tumnus, the first creature who finds Lucy, he's great.
What a great scene in the movie, too. It's so picturesque.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Tumnus has this mystical air about him.
It's
so
frozen,
good.
but it's cozy.
And James McAvoy does such a good job as Mr. Tumnus, because you can tell, he's playing it very well, where he's very friendly, kind, fond, but you can also see, those minute facial expressions of him debating, oh, this is a human. I'm supposed to turn her in. Oh, but she's so small, and she's a child. What do I do? It's so good.
All the nuance. I haven't even, rewatched that scene since seeing it, a long time ago. What you're describing is still very present in my memory of I remember the performance he gave, and I really hope it still lives up to my memory.
It's really good. It's really good. Can you tell I really like the Narnia movies?
But you were saying.
And I'm sure you're both familiar with this more or less. Gerald Tolkien talking about one of his at least initial inspirations for, I don't know if it was The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or both, but an image of a wizard standing on, what is it, a wizard on a mountain is some sort of painting he saw. And that's what became Gandalf, originally Gundalf. It seemed interesting to me, the parallels of both of these two English guys were friends who wrote classic fantasy works, both inspired by a painting of a solitary character, just kind of doing their thing.
Sometimes those paintings just hit different.
They do. This really puts a lot of perspective into their relationship for me because I've read Lord of the Rings. I never read Narnia, and they're two different styles of storytelling and world building where Tolkien was like, I need to build layers upon layers of complex, intricate society and a huge mythos with gods and Maya and Balrogs and whatnot. And C.S. Lewis was just like, yes, the line walks. Yes, Santa's here. Yes. It's Jesus. Yes. Crash the children in the train. Yes.
Silver chair, enchanted silver chair.
Hit it, quick, hit it, boy, hit it. Quick. I don't know why they would hit it, but that's the cover of the book.
From my very vague memory of the silver chair, because I think I read it, but I don't remember much of it. The White Witch comes back. Now she's like
A
green.
chair? Oh, green.
No. She's going by a different name.
Green Witch.
Or I think she's going by Jadis again or something like that.
Oh.
But then the silver chair is tied to her power or something, so Eustace has to destroy it. I don't remember.
It's Prince Caspian's like son or something. I'm trying to remember all these
Oh, wait,
synopses
okay.
I read. I think it's Prince Caspian's son, and she's like keeping him there. And she tells him, every night you have to go sit in this chair or else you'll turn into a giant snake and start killing people. And when Eustace and his friend see Caspian's son go sit in this chair, he suddenly goes like, the chair like locks him in place. And he's like, suddenly, you got to get me out of this chair. You got to get me out of this chair. She's trapped me here. I'm not really supposed to be here. And they realize it's like an enchanted chair. And this witch has like, that's how the enchantment refreshes itself, I guess, is that he has to sit in this chair and it locks him in place. But he like gets his memories back for that like brief moment of time.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
so she tells like people don't trust him.
I thought this was something else, but no, I think it's fine.
Sorry, quick correction on my point. So it's the Green Lady in the silver chair. Some fans speculate that the Green Lady is the White Witch, but it's not made explicitly clear. So she could be, she could not be, because the White Witch dies.
Aslan eats her.
Yeah.
Crunch.
That's another moment in the movie that I remember them putting a lot more like attention into in heightening that moment, because there's a moment where like Aslan pounces on her in the movie and like the battle starts moving by in like quick time and everything's a blur, and like there's a moment in the book where like C.S. Lewis describes Aslan's facial expressions and this kind of mixture of like understanding but sadness but also just sort of friendliness. And there's a moment where when Aslan's like looking down at the White Witch because he's about to freaking eat her, he's like roaring and snarling, and then his face just kind of calms and she just like sort of stares into his, and then he goes rawr, and then that's the end. And it was like a really like impressive moment of like just kind of revealing something about Aslan's whole thing and his whole dynamic.
But he's also just a lion.
Also just a lion. Sometimes you gotta eat a witch.
Sometimes you gotta. For political stability and for my stomach stability. I'm hungry. Crunch.
Turn around, it is done. I think Jino maybe would like the silver chair because there's a whole thing in the silver chair where they go into a hollow earth situation.
Whoa!
Into a place literally called the Underland.
Are the bugs big?
I don't
Do
know
they
if
wear
there-
hats?
I don't know if there's bugs, but there's rock people.
Yeah, rock people are good too. Rock
There's
people are good
There's
too.
an ocean,
There's an ocean.
I
yeah.
think.
Before we wrap up, just quick appreciation for the Narnia soundtrack, which has inspired so much of my writing.
The same composer also did Shrek and
Wow.
other movies. I looked them up because I was like, "What do you do?" And I was so impressed.
That makes a lot of sense because I was so surprised when I heard Smash Mouth's All-Star playing during the Narnia. No, I'm kidding.
Harry Gregson Williams. Harry Gregson Williams.
Wow, he's one of the
Golden
big
Compass.
names.
Wait, it's actually really funny that he
Nope,
did...
not Golden
Oh,
Compass.
not Golden Compass.
I don't know
Never
why
mind.
Google's put that up there. Hold on. House of Gucci.
Oh.
Mulan, the new one.
Oh.
The Penguins documentary where Benedict Cumberbatch can't say penguin.
Penguins.
Penguin.
Penguins.
Oh, The Martian. Wow.
Oh.
Prometheus. Cowboys and Aliens. All the Shrek movies. X-Men Origins.
Ooh, I do also like the X-Men Origins soundtrack.
It's good. That one's really good. Spy Kids.
No way.
And Chicken
That's
Run.
awesome.
And the Tigger movie.
The
Wow.
Tigger movie.
Prince of Egypt. Oh, he did Prince of Egypt.
Oh.
Suddenly everything makes sense.
There we go. There's your
Wow.
trivia for the day.
Wow.
Go win some bar trivia now.
What stone is primarily silicate, quartz, and iron? Aslan.
Shrek 2.
Shrek 2. The Prince of... Oh, never mind.
I'm just going to order some more wings and go, guys.
And then that's when our character walks through the door and stumbles into Narnia. It's all coming true.
What do they eat in Narnia?
C.S. Lewis goes into detail
No,
multiple
I know,
times.
but
Mr.
if all
Beaver
the
drinks
animals,
beer.
If all the
They
animals...
offer the kids wine.
Yeah, no, Mrs. Beaver literally gives the kids alcohol, I'm pretty sure, so that they can sleep.
I guess that wasn't that uncommon at the time, though.
That's true.
It's World War II Britain. Got to get
That's
some liquid in
true.
those kids somehow.
Yeah.
All the pipes have been hit by bombs.
Yeah.
But if all the animals are sentient and walk on two legs, except for fish, I guess, because they're not real because they don't have legs. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, whatever.
Don't think
Whatever,
about it
it's
too
fine.
hard.
Yeah.
Actually, sorry, I just know so many random Narnia facts. In Prince Caspian, the premise is that the Telmarines have taken over Narnia.
Are they humans?
They are humans.
Okay.
Yeah. They're humans, but they come from basically an adjacent... Actually, okay. They actually come from our world, but they found a portal that leads to Narnia, and they formed Telmar, and then the Telmarines got more powerful, and they took over Narnia, and then Prince Caspian gets to become king of Narnia.
Yay!
Hey.
But they basically outlaw any talk about Aslan or Narnia's magic, and so a lot of the animals actually lose their sentience.
Whoa.
Oh.
In the movie, again, I haven't read the book, so I don't know if this happens in the book. In the movie, there's a moment where the Pevensey siblings go back to Narnia and they're like, "What's happening? This place looks different." And a lot of Cair Paravel has been destroyed and overgrown now, so a lot of years have passed. And they encounter a bear by a river, and Lucy's very excited. Because this is the first animal they've seen in Narnia so far, and she goes up to it and she's like, "Hello, can you help us? We're a little confused and lost." And then the bear attacks her because
It's a bear.
Yeah, so
That's interesting. I like that a lot.
yeah, so they start, and then there's just a small pocket of animals who are just holding on to their faith and belief in Narnia, basically.
Don't send me back to oblivion.
That's dark.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there just trying to hold on to your thoughts. And just please, please, no. Ooh, bug. No. No. Come on, Mr. Frog. Come on.
Yeah. Anyways, this has been my TED Talk about Narnia.
Hey.
A good TED Talk.
Thanks for having me read Narnia.
Yeah.
Now I can say I've read it.
Yeah, thanks for reading it.
Of course. And thanks for listening, listeners.
Yes.
And rating.
And
Please.
subscribing.
Please rate.
You did all those things, didn't you? You rated, subscribed, commented on every platform where Nostalgia Club is available. Even Spotify. You found a way.
Found a way.
Until next time, open your wardrobe and see if it leads to Narnia.
Ooh. Until next time, don't cite the deep magic to us because we were there when it was written.
That's good. Until next time, lazy Sunday, wake up in the late afternoon, call Parnell just to see what he's doing. Yo, what up, Parnes? Yo, Sandberg, what's cracking? You thinking what I'm thinking? Narnia? Then it's happening. But first, my hunger pangs are sticking like duct tape on it.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for listening to Nostalgia Club. This is the end. Blah, 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 blah. Excellent. Thank you for listening to Nostalgia Club. If you enjoyed this episode, follow us on Twitter @_Nostalgia Club and on Instagram @Nostalgia Club Podcast. Leave a comment, give us a rating, and subscribe. You can also send us an email with your suggestions for what we should review next at nostalgiaclubpodcast@gmail.com.
But first, my hunger pangs are sticking like duct tape. Let's hit up Magnoka's. I think that's how they pronounce it. And Mac on some cupcakes. No doubt those bomb frosting. That bomb bakery's got all that bomb frosting. I like these cupcakes more than Big Adams loves Gosling. It's a song about Narnia. They go to see Narnia. Back when Yahoo Maps was a thing. It's Andy Samberg. It's a Lonely Island.
Yeah.
Back when they did SNL.
Do it one more time.
The chorus is, it's the chronic, what Cools of Narnia?
Wait, I need to watch this. That's great.